Hey everyone, this is James from TDB bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be doing a comparison episode, going to be comparing a couple of Chensheng blends, the Bawang, also known as the Emperor from 2016, as well as the Yihao, known as number 1 from 2017. These are both kind of blends that Chensheng has been doing for a long time, which is why they are kind of always the two kind of blends on the forefront. My understanding is that another blend that they do fairly often, the Zodiac, every year does change a bit. These two, on the other hand, are known to be a little bit more consistent, and they've been making it every year, which kind of tells you something. So sort of like Dai Tea Factory makes the 7542, or Shotgun makes the 8653. These guys have been making these blends pretty often. So yeah, I do have their teas because they've been around for so long, since 2009. They've made so many of them over the years that I have brought them onto the show a couple times, sometimes on normal episodes, other times on the In-Between-Esodes. Here's how Chensheng describes them on their website. The Yihao is described as powerful, mellow, smooth, and aromatic. The Bawang has bitterness, penetrating aroma, and sweet aftertaste. And to be honest, I know the Bawang, the Emperor, quite a bit better than the Yihao. Why is that? Well, I've always gravitated a little bit more towards it, and I think a lot of it is just the overall strength, that bitterness, that penetrating aroma. Those are things that really, really stand out to me. And I don't necessarily love it as a drink to have when it's like young or anything like that, just because I'm not someone that gravitates towards those greener profiles, just because I see this as a tea with a fair bit of potential and something that could be quite interesting down the line. So yeah, I did add one additional wrinkle into this comparison, and we'll see how it goes, is I did blind these teas as well. So I put them in little tins, mixed them up a bit, and so we will see how that impacts stuff. I do know the Bawang quite a bit better than the Yihao, so it'll be interesting just to see. So again, the goal is basically to kind of explore these blends. For me, at least, specifically, the Yihao is one that I do want to know a lot better. A lot of people do hold it in decent regard. It's actually the one I had first. I had this in, I believe, 2014, 2015. Tea Urchin used to sell it, interestingly enough. It used to be quite cheap, and then it got a little bit more expensive over the time. Never picked up a cake or anything like that, and I don't remember it particularly standing out back then, but if you want to go back to the deep kind of archives of TDB into like 2015, I did feature it on a Tea of the Month report back then. I think it was like semi-aged Munghai County tea, something like that. The Bawang has been brought on a lot more recently, and I'd say it's kind of my benchmark as far as like some of the Chensheng teas to age. So yeah, let's get on to this comparison. All right, so let's get on to this comparison. So I don't know which tea is which, so we got the tea on the left, tea on the right. I did just give both of these teas a rinse. I haven't even done the first steep yet. Both fairly young presenting. Young hay, a little bit more kind of sweetness on the nose coming off of the tea on the right. So yeah, let's start over here on the left. See how this tea is. So using 4 grams for 75 milliliters. This there's a lot of different ways to evaluate teas. Usually what I will do is I will just do, have a session with them, have a session with the other one the next day, something like that. So the side-by-sides are definitely one way. I'm not going to say they're the end-all, be-all. They definitely can show you certain things about the teas when you're having them just so side-by-side. Especially for similar teas, they're going to really help to emphasize what differences they do have. Also pretty young presenting here. I mean, these teas, I think, were definitely stored in some sort of climate control if they were stored in Guangzhou or something like that. A little more aroma coming off of this tea on the left. And so what I will do at the end is look at the bottom of these, which have A and B. A is signified as the Bawang, so that tea would be one of these, and then B is the Yihao. So I just have a simple little A-B label. Mix these up really good, so I really don't have any idea which one is which yet, especially because what I do know about the Bawang, which I've said I do know better, is more based off of taste and stuff. I really couldn't judge too much off the aroma of the specific sample. Cheers. Okay, that's got a nice sturdy bitterness base to it already. In fact, I strongly suspect that's the bawang from just the taste of that. And definitely tastes a little bit like it smells, perhaps with a little more sweetness coming into it. Ooh, yeah, there's that really penetrating bitterness to it. But it is accompanied with like a nice sweetness to it as well. So yeah, let's go over here to have this other tea. Sit with that for just a second. The body of this is definitely a bit smoother and maybe a bit thicker. It presents a lot less bitterness to me. Yeah, definitely smoother. I would definitely guess that this is the Yihao. From the ways these are going, I'll probably go 3 steeps on these. Okay, so let's do another steep. Nice sweetness to that, I would say. And when it comes to the Chensheng teas, my preference is for it to be bitter. And that might just be kind of me projecting my own expectations onto these sorts of teas. So perhaps that's a little unfair for some of them that lean a little bit more away from the bitterness. But that's, that's just kind of how I look for it. The bitterness and the way it lingers in the mouth as far as the aftertaste and stuff. I should be clear that it's not just the bitterness on its own. Okay, so here we go. Keeping these steeps pretty short. I think this third one maybe we'll push it a little bit more. A little hard to judge colors off of these well-used chais. I did try to clean out a little bit more, but this one's looking a tad darker. The Emperor, I believe, was the older blend. Let me check that. Yes, Emperor is 2016. Again, just a 1-year difference, so we're talking about 8 versus 9, so pretty close in age here. So we stopped with this one, so let's start with this tea on the right. Take a smell of the leaves as well. Acorn, nuts, kind of a nice nuttiness to it. If I had this blind, I would definitely guess they were a little bit younger than they actually are. This one has a lot more bassy lower notes to it at this point. So the tea on the left, also a thing I tend to go for. Yeah, very pleasant. Some florals, some nuttiness coming into this too. Nice body, you gotta say. Yeah, very nice body to this. It is quite a pleasant tea. In fact, I think if I were to serve something for someone and I wasn't sure of their taste, I think probably this tea on the right is the better bet, which I'm guessing is the Yihao at this point. Yeah, nice acorn nut sweetness to this. Still a bit green for my taste, but those are my tastes. My tastes gravitate definitely to the darker sorts of teas. Cheers. Sharper. This is a little narrower in its focus, so that's interesting too. It kind of tells me that the Yihao has kind of a bit more fullness to it as compared to the bawang, which I'm assuming is this one at this point. The sharpness and the bitterness is definitely very present. So, my initial impressions of the blends is that the bawang has a lot of that kind of penetrating, like very bitter leaf bitterness. And assuming that this tasting comes out as I'd expect, I would continue with that assumption. It does accompany with this kind of like dark, grapey, if you're fancy, you would call it like muscatel or something like that, one of those fancy wine terms. Dark, grapey, raisin sweetness, which is nice. But definitely this tea on the left I would say is probably a tea for the future. So yeah, let's get a little raunchy and push this next steep just a bit. I'm gonna reheat that water, make sure we're nice and hot. Pushing probably at this point still not super long. Maybe let's go 15 seconds, something like that. Okay, yeah, got plenty of water in there still. Let me know what your experiences are with these Chensheng Hao blends. I like this brand. It's also very interesting to try a brand that is accessible, but is like not really focused so much on the West. Hopefully it's a brand we can continue to get with the madness of international trade, but we'll see. I believe these teas did ship from China, although they do have supposedly a Canadian warehouse. So yeah, let's call that good there. Yeah, so the cumulative effect of both of these is there's definitely still some kind of bitterness lingering in my mouth, but it is accompanied by quite a bit of sweetness. Again, a little hard to judge the aftertaste here. So yeah, another 15 seconds for this guy. So yeah, that's one thing I really like about Chensheng Hao. They also focus a lot on areas I'm specifically interested in. They focus a lot on Menghai County, which I think is generally pretty tasty tea. I like their Naka teas. Those are teas I'm not totally sure what their kind of aging progress would be, but that's another blend that I've talked about over the years that I think would be pretty well. And I also do have a couple, I intend to talk a bit about the Yinbanjiang sometime in the next few months or so. So that's another one that you guys can sort of look forward to at some point. Okay, so the tea on the left definitely brewing a fair bit darker. So again, we're going to go back to tea on the left and then over to tea on the right. Almost smells a little bit more like the tea on the right has been. A little nuttiness creeping into it, a little bit less of those dark berry notes. More floral on this left one. Way more floral. Cheers. This one, pushing it, it's not that bad actually. It does thicken up the base quite a bit, which I find to be nice. It's a little bit less narrow than the previous steep. Oh, and there is that bitterness. Okay, yeah, so not bad. I am curious kind of how the Bawang or the Emperor will turn the corner at some point with that bitterness. I've had a couple of more aged examples, and the bitterness is still there. I haven't had anything that's been a little bit more aggressively stored. I'd be curious to try those at some point, too, just because, I can tell that the Bawang is intended to be a strong tea to age. Cheers. Definitely higher noted, more of an aromatic brew to this, for sure. Smoother, kind of those acorn floralness notes. Okay, yeah, so continuing. It's pretty consistent, steep in, steep out. So let's see what this was. A, Bawang, as expected, and B, Chensheng Yihao, as expected as well. Okay, so that wraps up this Inbetweenisode. I would definitely say both of these blends are worth checking out. If I were to recommend Chensheng Hao teas to check out, I'd say these are probably top of the list, top 2 or 3, just to see what you gravitate more towards. I think some people might be similar to me, gravitate more towards the Bawang, that really intense penetrating bitterness, while others might prefer the Yihao, which I think in some respects is kind of a little bit more well-rounded tea, whereas the Bawang is very specific. So I could see why Chensheng Hao would call the Yihao more of their flagship. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see y'all next time. Cheers.